So last time we ended with civilization crumbling around us, and today we face a heavy responsibility. So Pryor's article makes a very, very simple point, but as so often with very simple points, these very simple logical points, it really has a lot of resonance. It's very far-reaching, the point he's making. What we've been doing so far in looking at Wittgenstein is shaping up to throwing out the idea of semantic value, throwing out the idea that notions of truth or reference, what the sign stands for, the contribution the sign makes to the meaning of a sentence containing it, that has anything to do with notions of truth or reference. So in the case of knowing what it is for something to be round, for example, the idea is that if you give yourself a verbal definition, or if you give yourself an image of roundness and say, that's what I mean by roundness, that can't be what drives your use of the term round. To characterize your use of the term round, it's better just to think in terms of the inputs to you making the judgment that thing is round, what kind of perceptions would lead you to make the judgment that thing is round, and what the implications are for action of you making the judgment that thing's round. And forget about the bit in the middle. That doesn't do any work. You can't derive that way of using the sign from merely having the image. Two different people could both have the same image in their heads, but keep using the sign in different ways. Okay, that's the point we've gone over many times now, is that? I mean, do I need to label that anymore, or is that pretty straightforward at this point? Okay. Well, and the same. So that's in general true for names. We don't need the notion of the object that the name refers to. We just need the inputs to our use of the name and what implications we draw from our use of the name. For predicates, we don't need the idea of a map from objects onto truth or falsity. We throw that out. For propositional constants like and or the semantic value there is not the object it stands for. It's not a map from objects to truth values. It's a map from truth values to truth values, and we throw that one out too. Right. So we just throw out semantic value altogether. Because the argument is the same in all cases. Just by being given the truth table, you can't derive the rules of inference for the term. You already need to know how to reason logically to get the rules of inference from the truth table. So forget all that stuff, and just characterize for and. You just characterize the meaning of and using the input rules and the output rules. So the input rule is if you get A and you get B and you get A and D, so you get Rowley Smokes and you get Isaac Fishes and you get Rowley Smokes and Isaac Fishes. That's all right. You just lay that down. That's fixing the meaning of and. And if you get A and B, you get A. So that's the output rule. If you've got Rowley Smokes and Isaac Fishes, then you get Rowley Smokes. And can you guess what the other output rule is? Okay, if you Rowley Smokes and Isaac Fishes, then you get Isaac Fishes. Okay, and then you've explained the meaning of and if you operate that way, if you use the sign that way, that's all there is to you understanding the sign. Okay, so that's a full characterization of the meaning of and you don't need any talk about truth or falsity here, any talk about reference, anything like that. That's really, I think, the natural way to read the upshot of what Wittgenstein's doing, talking about following a rule. There is only the use of the sign. Talk about what it means in any sense over and above this is just idle. Now if we do this for A and B, can we do it for or? Yes, we can do it for or. What's the input rule? Is you get A, you get A or B, and if you get B, you get A or B. Right? What's the output rule for or? Is you get A or B, what can you conclude from that? Can you conclude A? No. Can you conclude B? No. Can you conclude anything at all? Well, you must be able to conclude. Sorry? You can conclude A or B? Yes. Thank you. The way we actually work, let me put it to you, is we reason like this. If you get A or B, and you say one or the other, A or B, and then if from A you can derive C, and if from B you can derive C, then you can say, well look, either way, C. You see what I mean? You just one or the other, and whichever way it goes, you get C. Therefore from A or B, you can conclude C. So if you say, look, either Romney wins or Obama wins, and presumably prior to the election people were sitting in smoke-filled, well maybe not smoke-filled, committee rooms going through just this kind of reasoning. If either Romney wins or Obama wins, from Romney winning, it follows that UC will need more money. If Obama wins, UC will need more money. So either way, what conclusion follows? UC will need more money. Please give generously. Okay? So that's, no, that's by the way. But that's how you reason before, right? Either way you say C, therefore C. You see what I mean? Yeah. So that's how you state the output rule for or. And the thing is, you might need some other premises. That's to say, when you're arguing from Romney winning, it follows that UC will need more money. You might need some other premises, right? It's not just because Romney wins. There might be other factors in play, meaning that UC will need more money. So call them X and Y, and then if from A or B, together with the hypothesis of X, and together with the hypothesis of Y, then from A you can derive C, and from B you can derive C, and forget about the A and B here. C follows from A or B, together with the other premises, X and Y. Okay? That should be very simple. If it doesn't seem very simple, I'm not explaining it correctly. How does it seem? You give me that one? Okay, so if I do that, then I've characterized the meaning of or without talking about truth or reference or anything like that at any point. Okay, so that's throwing out semantic value and just describing use. Okay, so doing it now for and or. So now, what about criticizing the use that you make of a term? If you think about Descartes and skepticism, then Descartes really seems to be operating with the idea that he knows what it is for all the propositions he understands to be true. He just doesn't know if he's using them in the right way. I mean, he knows what it is for there to be a hand here, for there to be a table there, for there to be other people around him. He knows what it is for all those things to be true. He just doesn't know if he goes about verifying them in the right way, because he uses his sense impressions. And his question is, do my sense impressions really give me a good way of finding out whether things are that way? I mean, the analog for a logical constant would be to say, well, I know the truth table for and or, but is this really a good way of finding out whether A or B is true? So once you know what it is for a sentence to be true, you can start to challenge your ways of finding out whether the sentence is true, or whether the truth of the sentence really has the implications you take them to have. Yeah, so that's what Descartes does. He says, well, I know what it is for there to be the regular world around me, but maybe my usual ways of finding out are no good. So if understanding a sign means knowing what has to be the case for sentences containing that sign to be true, that's the objective of your way of finding out. Your way of finding out is going to tell you, is that thing true? Your way of drawing implications is going to be what follows, if that thing is true. Then, like Descartes, you can criticize the ways the use that you usually make of the sign. You can say, maybe I'm not using it the right way. So you get your input to applying the term, you know what has to be so for an application of the term to be right, and then you get your output. You're drawing your conclusions from that. But The picture here is that knowing what has to be so, and this is a natural way of thinking of it, if you've got your ways of finding out whether a sentence is true, then the truth of the sentence is the objective of this procedure. Finding out whether you're doing things right here, that has a point. Its point is to find out whether this thing is true. And let me give you a parallel here. Suppose someone says, look, I play lots of bridge. I love playing bridge. Someday I'm going to be rich and famous because I play so much bridge. And then you can argue with them if they say, why are you playing so much bridge again? Because it's going to make you a lot of money, because it's going to make you famous. And you can say, that's crazy. There's only a handful. I don't know we should be disrespectful, but you might say there's only a handful of cranks in the world left to play bridge. You're never going to get famous or rich doing that. I mean, how much money do you make doing it anyway? And you can check, right? But on the other hand, you can have someone who is just a bridge nut. They just wake up in the morning and they think of that as drawing their hand for the day, and they spend the whole day dreaming about their next game. And they just play bridge for its own sake. And if someone's doing that, then you can't really criticize or justify it. I mean, everything else in their life is just about allowing them to play more bridge. Right? You have no leverage against a person like that to say, why do you play bridge? He does everything else in order to play bridge. Playing bridge doesn't have some sort of point for him. That's the point of everything else. So if someone's doing something just for its own sake, you can't really, you have no leverage to justify or criticize it. But if they're doing it for some further point, then you can say, how am I going to justify or criticize it? Does it get me that point? So if you've got the notion of the truth condition of a sentence as specifying the point of what you're doing, you're trying to find out if it's true or not, then you can criticize or justify your ways of getting that objective. So Descartes' kind of skepticism says, are the ways we use to verify statements really good ways of finding out whether they're true? But suppose that with Wittgenstein, you just throw out the idea of semantic value. You throw out that notion of truth or falsity or reference and say there's only the use. All there is just our ordinary practice of talking the way we do. Then there is no point that it's meant to be serving. There is no objective that it's meant to be getting you. That's all there is. You can't criticize the way we ordinarily talk. You can't do the thing Descartes was trying to do of criticizing the use of the term. Yeah. So if you've got something like this picture, your ways of finding out whether something's a cube, and your image of a cube is telling you what it is really to be a cube, then you can say, is that really a good way of finding out whether something's a cube? But if that truth condition is gone, then there's no possibility of skepticism. You just talk the way you do. That's what it is to assign a particular meaning to the sign. So similarly, if you've got these rules for a, for and, or for or, then there's no way of justifying or criticizing them. I mean, the thing is that that's really quite general. These are very artificial lab examples, but often enough, there's such a thing as bits of language that people find offensive, and that you say you ought not to talk that way. And we do say things like, you ought not to use notions like, well, I mean, right now, I don't want to start some conflagration, right? But right now, there's a whole string of words that if I used any of them, it would just hit, it would make you see red, right? Suppose you take a notion like which. If Wittgenstein is right, there's no way of criticizing our technique, our custom or practice of using a notion like which. So if you come upon a community that just has this as the input rule for which, X floats when pushed into water, right? And that's your input rule for which, and your output rule for which is from X is a which, so you can conclude X should be bond. Well, you have no way of criticizing that, right? That's all you can say is, this is the way of my people. This is the use we have for the term which. It's not something that can be justified or criticized. You can make no sense to be skeptical about this notion. So that is one somewhat disturbing consequence of Wittgenstein's approach. If all there is to learning the meaning of a sign like which is learning a custom or a practice or a technique, then you have no way of criticizing the custom or practice or technique. But I mean, this is close. The way I put it there is very, very simple. But that's close enough to real life examples to make you think, can't you criticize? Is it really true? You can't criticize a way of using a term. Now, Wittgenstein's, Prior's example of tonk is a really simple laboratory example where things seem really to be going wrong. So let's just lay out what tonk is. The general background to what Prior's discussion is Wittgenstein saying things like, a person goes by a signpost only insofar as there exists a regular use of signposts as a custom. To understand the language means to be a master of a technique. There's a way of grasping the rule which is not an interpretation. That's to say, it's not a way of saying what it is for the use of the term to be true or false, but it's just exhibited in what we call obeying the rule or going against it in particular cases. So suppose you've got a technique or a custom or a practice of using the sign tonk in the following way. And now ask, is there any possibility of criticizing it? So the input rule for A or B, or from A, you can get A or B, and from B, you can get A or B. So that's the same as the input rule for tonk. Okay? From A, you can get A tonk B, and from B, you can get A tonk B. Watch me very closely here. That's all right, right? I can define the term like that. That's the way we use it. Okay? So from A, you can get A tonk B. So from Raleigh Smokes, you can get Raleigh Smokes, tonk, Elvis is alive. That's all right. That's just the way it works. Okay? That's the way it all works. So it must be all right for tonk to work like that. You now consider the output rule for A and B. Well, that was from A and B, you can get A, and from A and B, you can get B. So the output rule for tonk is just like that. From A tonk B, you can get A, and from A tonk B, you can get B. So if you get A tonk B, if you get Raleigh Smokes, tonk, Elvis is alive, you can conclude Elvis is alive. An invigorating thought, right? Okay, so that's the introduction rules, and that's the elimination rules. So this is just like any regular logical constant. This is just how you explain the meaning. That's all there is to explaining the meaning. Right? We don't have any notion of semantic value. We don't have any notion of truth or falsity. We're just describing the use. We might come upon a people, some little known tribe of logicians somewhere, who use tonk exactly that way. And that's all there is to the sign having a particular meaning. It's got that regular pattern of use. And the pattern of use is perfectly well defined. So suppose you have Raleigh Smokes. Then from Raleigh Smokes you can infer Raleigh Smokes, tonk, Elvis is alive. That's all right. And from Raleigh Smokes, tonk, Elvis is alive, you can infer Elvis is alive. So from Raleigh Smokes you can infer Elvis is alive. But notice that Raleigh Smokes and Elvis is alive here, they could be any two arbitrary sentences. Yeah? So suddenly from anything I can infer anything. Yeah? If I say there's a sparrow in the grass, I look out the window, there's a sparrow in the grass, there's a sparrow in the grass, Tonk Romney is president right now, today. There's a sparrow in the grass. Okay, so I've concluded that, that's all right. There's a sparrow in the grass, Tonk Romney is president, therefore Romney is president. That's just the elimination rules. So I proved that Romney actually is president. Okay? You guys are used to shocks in this one. We should tell Fox News. Let's just go over the reasoning here. Okay, suppose there is a sparrow in the grass. Yeah? I mean, I can make it something else if you like. I mean, suppose there's a laptop on the table, or there are people on chairs. From that, you can infer there are people on chairs, Tonk Romney is president. And from there are people on chairs, Tonk Romney is president, you can infer Romney is president. So you prove that Romney is president. Is there any kind of weak spot in the reasoning?
No, there's no weak spot.
Okay. Sorry? And notice how powerful the technique is. Suppose you made it Ron Paul as president. There are people in the chairs. There are people in the chairs, Tonk Ron Paul is president. There are people in the chairs, Tonk Ron Paul is president. Therefore, Ron Paul is president. That works too. They must have some power sharing. Agree with it. Is there a weak spot in the reasoning? Yes? One, two.
Consider Tonk meaning the explosion before and prove that you have to. I think consider that weak spot.
And you say there's a weak spot that it lets you prove anything.
Well, I mean, you prove contradiction.
That's right, I can prove contradictions. I can prove that Romney is not president. Right? I don't think it's a weak spot though. I mean, it just displays the power of the technique. I mean, just saying you don't like the results isn't to show that there's something wrong with the process. Yeah?
Can you just write two different uses for compound and start treating them as the same?
Well, here's the definition of Tonk. Here's the whole story about Tonk. That's the input rule and that's the output rule. Yeah, so it's perfectly coherent. It's perfectly well defined. Yeah. There's no problem with the reasoning. Don't say you don't learn anything in this class. Think how valuable this will be to you in your everyday life.
I can prove anything.
That's right. In a very short space of time too. And from minimal premises. You just need Tonk. Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think there's a problem with the conclusion.
There's a problem with the conclusion. The Romney is president.
How any conclusion that comes rule.
Yeah. You might just be reading too much of the mainstream media.
Because the conclusion is so messed up, it can't be right.
It can't be right, right? But okay, but there's a problem with where is it? This is perfectly well defined, right? Yep.
So, is it possible that one, okay, so I take that Tonk is maybe correctly here, but what if one rule, say Tonk, doesn't allow us to use another rule correctly? So something like the rule of early voting.
Do you mean exploit by the explosion? I think you meant you can prove anything.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so there's an explosion.
We might have a rule for logical inferences that you shouldn't be able to prove anything, and we do it in a certain way, and that's just the convention of the rule. But then we have something like Tonk that doesn't allow us to obey that rule, so we have a conflict of rules, such that one of them can't use it.
Right, there could be conflict in your system of rules. Yeah. Well, that might happen. That probably does happen, actually. But the question then is, what are the principles for resolving it? We need some kind of trade-off. And the kind of trade-off you get might be, well, be careful when you're using Tonk. Right? Don't use it for political purposes. Right? Use it only to prove things about what's going on in outer space. That would stop the conflict. Use it judiciously. Use it wisely.
That seems like you're criticizing custom for a rule.
It does seem that, well, yeah, custom might be a complex thing with lots of moving parts. And what you're saying is a custom might have things that force you to make accommodations, internal accommodations. But you could make all those internal accommodations, couldn't you? And still keep Tonk in play. You could say, well, we're only going to use it to prove results about what's going on in outer space. And the first person to use Tonk to establish any particular result has the field, as it were. So someone comes up later and proves a negation. Well, that doesn't count because they were second. That'll be all right. There won't be any conflicts there. That would contain the explosion. Okay, so that seems, yeah.
Well, I mean, there seems to be something about our normal inference rules that hold with our experiences with concrete things. You know?
Hold with our experiences.
If I have like a banana and an apple, like the inference rules like are formalized of that kind of environment. You know, so like if I have a banana and an apple, I know that I have an apple and I know that I have a banana.
Okay.
That works. But I feel like with Tonk, we can't have any like experience of where that would necessarily hold.
Yeah, but how does it go for A and B? I mean, if the rules for A and B are, whatever they are, like that, right? I mean, how does that relate to experience? Are they grounded in experience somehow better than the rules for Tonk?
Yeah, I think you could say that if like and means that like you have two things in front of you and then you kind of abstract from that, you know? And then you have the first thing and you have the second thing. You can kind of focus on either one of those.
Right.
So with Tonk, you can't really do that.
Well, you can focus on either one of them.